So Make and Pay, I will be talking about some payment service providers that we connected our platform to. But first, I want to say hello, and really great to meet you all. It's such a diverse community. I try to find hello in as many African languages as possible, but it's really wonderful to be here. I already spoke to many people, and it's so lovely to hear all your stories and your relation to Python and the passion that we share. So my name is Loek. You can memorize it by just saying Loek, it's Loek. So no Loak or whatever. That's just a weird Dutch way of writing a oo sound. You can find me on Twitter. That's just my full name, Loek van Gent. And I'm on GitHub too. So I currently work for a company called GoodUp. It's a fairly small company with 25 people. This is in Amsterdam, where my work is, and this is actually, it used to be the headquarters of the West Indian Trading Company. That's one of our darkest pages in Dutch history. That's basically when we were very wealthy over the backs of Africans. So, but now we're doing different business there. We're located here, and GoodUp, you might already know by the word good that we want to do good. And we try to do so by saying we're here for connecting people with smart ideas to people with time, money, or skills. So someone might have a smart idea to make the world a better place. For instance, they might want to start a Python conference in Zimbabwe. So here's someone you probably know, Anna, and together with Humphrey, they wanted to start the first PyCon in Zimbabwe. But yeah, they needed some money for that, and they started a crowdfunding campaign on one of our platforms. And what happened then is something that I'm very proud of, because it's what will happen in a Python community. All over the world, donations were made to this project. So US, Brazil, of course, from Zimbabwe too. Well, you can see. And they raised even more than they bargained for, and it was a wonderful success, I think. I wasn't there that year, but I joined them the year after. And yeah, we all know what a wonderful community the Zimbabwean Python community is. But, so, that's one smart idea, but we extended that a bit, and we now something that we call a purpose engagement program. So we have different platforms that run on the same bit of software, and it's all about projects and people either donating money or their time. And we have a dream. It's what they call a big, hairy, audacious goal, or a BHAG. And what we aim for is by 2030, we want to engage 1 billion people to make a positive impact using our technology. So that's pretty ambitious. We will do that in 3 different ways. So we have some big corporates that we work together with that allow their employees to spend 1 or 2 days a year doing voluntary work, or even longer. Sometimes they say someone can spend 2 months helping a social startup or charity to run their programs. things like that. So that's what we do for the big corporates. Then we have some civic programs that might something. It's like the PyCon Zimbabwe project that was running on 1% Club, but also some municipalities, so cities that are looking for ways how to spend their money. And they say, if you want a new playground in your neighborhood, maybe you can crowdfund like 50% yourself, and we will add the other 50%. And then that way the city will know that people in that neighborhood really want that playground, and they will look after it because they paid for it themselves too. So it works really well. And here, it's the smallest column, but to me the most interesting one. That's some programs that we run. They are partly funded by the Dutch government, and I will talk a bit later about that, but it's for startups in Africa. But here is an example of Booking.com, the hotel booking website that has offices all over the world, and every employee is allowed 1 day a year to do some good. And this is the team from Accra, and it's only 9 people, but they went for a day with the entire office to clean up some part of the beach. There's enough to be cleaned up here in Accra, but it is getting involved in the local community and trying to make a difference. So, part of the program was that they just did a cleanup, but they also are setting up a center where people living around the most the areas with the most rubbish, and they say if you hand over a big bag of rubbish, you get food in return. So they're thinking about how to scale this cleanup further up. And here is one of the programs that we run. It's called The Next Economy, and it is aimed at youngsters that want to start up their own business. And they do so, but to kickstart it, they are looking for a fund to start off with, and they are asked to crowdfund half of it themselves. So it'll be something around $500 that will crowdfund themselves, and they have a matching fund of another $500, and then with that $1,000 they will start their business, and they also get some coaching from another partner that we work together with, and in that way they will have their own business. Here's an example from Nigeria. It's not readable, but it's someone who wants to make 3D presentations for companies. That's his business, and he needs some gear for that, and then he will start finding clients to make 360 virtual tours. So that's all very nice, but we're here to talk about payment service providers, or make and pay. How a payment or a donation typically works is a user will make a donation, say $50, and that will have to go to the project. So in Django, you would then create a donation object and then a payment that's connected to it. But it's not only in dollars. Dollars won't make any sense here in Ghana, for instance. So you might have donations in dollars and then a payment, or donation in Naira if you're in Nigeria. So how would you solve that? Is there any Django people around? Quite some. So you might think, yeah, let's just add a currency field to that donation object, and then you're done. But there's a neater way to do that with a library called Jenga Money. So what it looks like is you will have a money field, and here's the donation, and there you have the money field. And that money field would store both the currency and the amount. And then you can have a list with different donations to one project, and some of the donations would be in Naira and some in dollars. But yeah, if you have dollars and Nairas in that same list, how will you add those up? You have to convert it to a currency, probably in Naira if it's a Nigerian project. So maybe add some conversion rates to your settings. Well, conversion rates do change. So luckily, there's another nice library to do that. It's called Django Money Rates. What you can do there is import this convert money. It will have a database with the latest currencies, and in your configuration you can set up how often this will get updated. And what you do is convert money, the amount, and the currency from, and then the currency too. So for instance, if you have 15,700 Nairas and you want to convert it to euros, it will print out something like this. And this is Django Money that knows how to print it with the euro sign and things like that. There's lots of magic in those libraries that you don't want to write yourself. Now let's try to add up all of the donations. So we have a list of donations. We want to have the values, well, the amount of currency, and then annotate the total of it. So what this will do, it will group all donations by currency and then have the total amount. And here is what you would end up with. So that's 5,000 euros, some Nairas, and some Kenyan shilling. And that you could run that again with the convert money and loop through all those totals that you got here and sum it, and then, well, in this case I have converted it to SEDI. So what way of payment that you are interested in differs on where you are. So we are based in the Netherlands. Most of our customers are either EU or US based. So there's a wonderful payment service provider called Stripe. And Stripe works quite neatly because you have a Stripe.js. I'm cheating here a bit here, talking about JavaScript on a Python conference. But what is nice about Stripe is, so this is JavaScript code. But what the neat thing about this is, Stripe will handle the payment method, so the credit card or the debit card in the front end, all those card details that you don't want to be dealing with in your code. You are not allowed to see those card details. It will all be in JavaScript and just in their browser and sent off to Stripe, who is qualified to handle that. And in the end, you just send the token to your backend, and it will be fine. But hey, this was to be about African payment service providers, right? Now let's have a look at what Stripe supports. There's a black hole there. Of course, in Africa, you have other means of payment. So this used to be the payment method in Zimbabwe for some time. Luckily, now I don't know if it's gotten better, but This is some countries that we were investigating how to use them. But then you have really a bunch of payment service providers. How would you connect different payment service providers? So you can have a donation in Naira that will be handled by one type of payment and a donation handled by another payment. And all those payments are quite different. So maybe you can use abstract models and extend those, but there, of course, is another Django library, way nicer, called Django polymorphic. So what you do there is you have a base model, just like with abstract models, where you have a payment and that's connected to the donation. You might have a user, and then here you have the payment service provider specific payment on top of that, where you can, if it's an M-Pesa payment, maybe you want to set an account number or something like that. And the nice thing about polymorphic models is that in the back office, you can generate a list with all the payments with what it would say here is the different payment providers. So another thing about payments is that you have to make sure that you get the status right. You don't want a payment to be set to failed or new or success if it's not. So how a payment flow would typically work is it will get authorized and then settled, but sometimes it will get cancelled or failed, and you want the donation to turn to either success or fail. So you could do that in the safe routine in your model, or maybe post signals, but there's, again, a nicer way of doing that. That's called Jango FSM, finite state machine. And how that works is, in your model, you can set a transition that's called settle, and if you call that, the status of your payment will change to settled. You specify this here, and in that method you can do all sorts of things. Maybe, so this is the payment. If the payment is settled, you want the donation to be success, but you probably also want to send a thank you email or update the wall of that project and things like that. And if you use this finite state machine, you have control over what's happening when. And you can also later on say only certain users are allowed to make that transition, or only the system is allowed to do so. I'm gonna look at some countries. So we have done implementations in quite some countries. I'm only going to show you a smaller few. So Nigeria. Nigeria mostly pays with credit cards, right? And then there's MasterCard, Visa, and Verve. What's Verve? I never heard about Verve before. I know of Verve Records, but apparently there's a big company called InterSwitch that has their own. They are the owner of the card. They also are a payment service provider, but it's lots of paperwork, really a lot of paperwork. Anyone from Nigeria that did InterSwitch? Congratulations, really. You have to pay $200 to even submit the paperwork. At least that was the case in 2016. And you have to be a Nigerian-based company. We weren't. So in the end, we gave up on InterSwitch and found something called Flutterwave. It was a new startup back in 2016, and the documentation was limited. They didn't have any Python examples. We took a PHP example they had, and through many Skype chats, we made it work. But only, I think it was 3 months ago, we wanted to start a new batch of projects, but the payments were failing. We got a bug report, and we thought, what's happening? And we got in contact with Flutterwave and said, oh, you're still using the old API. They had a brand new API, which I have to admit is really nice. They have had a big funding, over 20 million US, and now they have a JavaScript solution like Stripe has, and it's now really well documented. Kenya, of course, M-Pesa is the most used payment method there. Safaricom, the owner, and they have an API too. Again, lots of paperwork. You have to be a Kenyan-based company, and to connect to the API, back in 2016 at least, you had to have Internet Explorer running on Windows 7 and make a connection. It was way too possible. This is a 15-page manual just to set up the connection even before you start using their API. Luckily enough, there's Leticia who helped us out there. We did have some problems there too. I'm going to skip a bit here. I'm going to skip Mali because there's no one from Mali. Uganda's Irene, if you're in, sorry. One more. There's no one from Somaliland, but this was a fun one. There are no online documentation. We had to port from a code example in PHP. We were the first international user of their API. No SSL whatsoever. It's not very secure. And they had an awesome 1990s website. I'm going to show it, don't be afraid. Look at this. I'm not a graphical designer, but this is awesome. But so it was a very simple setup, but still it ran really well. No field donations whatsoever. Only at some time they had to switch it off because the government didn't allow US dollar transactions anymore, and that was the only currency that they had for their API. So the conclusion, we had more than 20 payment service provider implementations that we tried out. Important is to describe the specific use case well. So donations in Kenya work in a real different way than with card payments. So people are used to get out their phone, jank in a number, and then be done with it. Leave tech to the tech companies. So the example with Safaricom and InterSwitch, they didn't do a very good job. But maybe Chucks can correct me on that one at some point. Sometimes simpler is better. Ask for the latest documentations. The times that we implemented the documentation that was online and it wasn't working, and we got in touch with them and they say, you're using the documentation that's online. Of course, that's not up to date, and they would email us the latest documentation. And be aware, things change all the time, a lot. So make sure you stay up to date. If there's API changes, do lots of logging in your system, error reporting, make sure you get notified if something goes wrong. And then a learning point for us, for my company, maybe we should have local developers that already know how to implement stuff. So I'm trying to quickly wrap this up. I want to show some results.
You have a few minutes more.
Okay. So this is the results of the different youth employment programs, the starting up, creating their own business. What we achieved is 34,000 US dollars. That was in mainly in Somaliland. 52 million in Naira, 37 million in Sefa, 11 million in Kenyan, and 61 in Ugandan shilling. Go look it up. I'm not gonna spoil you with telling what the grand total is, because this money, to me, was not the most important thing. The most important thing is it was in so many different places. There was 600 businesses that started, and we're not that much later yet, so we're not sure how many will survive. But the first batch that ran 3 years ago, I believe that over 70% of those businesses are still active. And there's even startups that are employing other people now. So I'm really proud of that. So what's next? So there are some plans that we might extend the program to the Gambia and to Zimbabwe. Please follow me on Twitter to stay updated, or please do get in touch. But more interesting might be, will there ever be a Pan-African payment solution? I don't know. I've been waiting for that for a long time. Maybe it's going to be PayPal, but I don't think PayPal adoption is very strong here. Maybe those Chinese will come along with Alipay and you will all be, or maybe it's that Zuckerberg guy with his Libra. I'm not entirely sure. Or maybe it's cryptocurrencies, or maybe Stripe or Adyen, another big payment service provider from Europe, might finally adopt local payment services. Adyen just started offering M-Pesa, but I think it would more be a company like Flutterwave or Somaliland from Kenya, that they might implement all the local payment service methods. But what about the dream that I had, or our company? 1 billion, that's quite a lot, but remember this, the corporates and the civic and the programs all in their little containers. We believe it should be more like this, with corporates getting in touch with local partners, with charities, NGOs, social startups, but also individuals. If we could have one big platform of doing good, and not only a startup would raise money and get some coaching, but get them in contact with Accenture or another big corporate that will help them out write a really good business plan. And then we might get to our dream. That's all I had to say. Maybe some questions? Thank you. I wasn't very clear. There's way too many questions.
Hello.
Sorry for that.
Sorry, this is a little bit technical, but I was wondering, how do polymorphic models get represented in the database itself?
A bit like abstract models would be. So you get one table for the base model, and then a table for all the extra fields that are in the extended, the polymorphic child, as it's called.
Hey, Luke. So what's the you talked about the convert model and being able to convert currencies from Django directly. Yep. What is the benefit of doing that compared to just using whatever conversion rate the payment service that you're using has? Like if you submit a payment in whatever currency and the payment service converts it and gives you some amount back, what is the benefit of doing the conversion yourself rather than just using whatever the service does?
So in some cases the payment service would convert it, and if you raise it in Naira, it would eventually pay it out in US dollars, for instance. But what we also do for some projects is connect two payment service providers. So if it's, because with the youth employment programs, a lot of funding also comes from the diaspora. So then there's people from the US that will pay through Stripe, and that would be paid out in US dollars, and then others in, for instance, Flutterwave, and that will be paid out in Naira, and still you want to show grand total. So then you have to do the conversion yourself.
Hey, Luke. I'm asking this question on behalf of Jeff here. He asked me, since he speaks French, he saw you pass up the slide about Mali. He's from Cameroon. We mostly use mobile money for our payments. Did you successfully implement a solution for mobile money payment provider?
In Mali? Yes, we did. In Mali, it's Orange Money, I think. That's the most used payment method. And the company is called VitPay. It's part of Longuinea, or Longuineo, if I pronounce it correctly. But the payments work, only payouts don't. So I wanted to. Now I can tell the story after all. So they don't do bank payouts in the end. So what we do is our local partner would hop on his bicycle, drive to the head office of the payment service provider. He will get a check and then disperse that to all the projects. So it's not a fully fledged payment service provider yet, but we do manage to collect donations there.
We still have time for, yes, one more. Thank you. Anyone else waiting for the microphone, by the way?
Thanks a lot for the talk. I really would like to have your take on Libra. I actually think that we are losing sometimes implementing that little small payment, because once Libra will be out of the current trouble, I mean, everybody is using Facebook. So in some way, everybody will just use Libra like.
Do you think so? I'm not totally convinced. And personally, I would not wish that Facebook would become a bank and have that information on me too. But who knows? We don't know how things will change. But I think I don't think in Kenya they would switch from M-Pesa to something else shortly. But for the countries where there's not so much a mobile solution yet, it might change. I don't know. But who knows? So that's what I'm saying. Keep your eyes open if you run projects like that, or even if you do it locally. Things might change. I think a couple of weeks ago there was an outage on M-Pesa, and people weren't able to use it for some time, and people got angry. So maybe they will look for something else. Who knows? Any more? And otherwise, catch me. I really love to talk to people who can correct me if I'm not using the right things, and to hear about what payment methods are available or used in your country, because that's very hard to find out if you're all far away in the Netherlands.
Thank you very much, Luke.